All right. Well, thank you everybody for hopping on. Again, I really appreciate it. My name is Will, and I am the leader of the Emergency Management Tableau user group. Today really kicks off the group in earnest. This is sort of the inaugural meeting where we're going to be doing a bit of background information about Tableau, about the group, the things we have planned for this year. And really, it's just going to be an opportunity for me to discuss with you all what the purpose and goals of the group are and how we can work together to meet them. So to give a quick overview, the first thing we're going to do is discuss, again, what is this user group? The second thing to chat about is what to expect in 2022. So we're a few months into the year, had a bit of a slow rollout here, but we've got some very exciting things that are in the works. The third element is going to be how to get involved. So the different things that you can do, whether it's going to just be as an engaged member of the group or perhaps in a more leadership position. And then finally, I just want to have some time for question and answers with folks. So that way we can all go ahead and make sure everything's squared away before we adjourn and kick to the next meeting. So first of all, what is the Emergency Management Tableau user group? The user group was created to promote data-driven decision-making throughout the field of emergency management. And I know that sounds simple, but I also know that as emergency management practitioners, that is kind of a lofty goal and isn't something that is always the case, especially right now. Emergency management really does rely, at least historically, on the subject matter expertise, of individuals, particularly those who have been within the field for a long time, in order to really drive things forward. So what we're seeking to do is really help shift that culture from subject matter expertise to something that's augmented by real sort of ground truth data as well. What we're seeking to do is really create an open forum for sharing best practices in Tableau and using other tools. This is, of course, a Tableau group, but I do want to make sure that we're not necessarily pigeonholing everybody and that we continue to share across the different things that we're doing. As an industry, we can be very siloed, and this is just an opportunity to help make sure that we continue breaking past those different silos. Second, we really want to provide analysts and opportunities and developers with the opportunity to ask questions. There is a really robust Tableau forum and a really robust just Tableau community generally on the web. That said, there isn't one that really caters to the needs of emergency management. As you all know, these are very different from other groups. So it's really an opportunity to make sure that we're answering the questions we need to in the context that we need to. That means really emphasizing uncertainty. That means emphasizing the sort of evolving nature of data and stuff like that. And then lastly, we're really just looking to increase data literacy in emergency management. Again, it's something that isn't necessarily where it ought to be, especially given a lot of the burgeoning challenges within emergency management. We all saw during the COVID-19 pandemic that data was often misconstrued, data was often hidden, and we're sort of working to help, again, solve some of these problems. We're not going to be able to change everything, but I think this is a really good forum for us to begin thinking about what we can do differently within the industry. So second of all, I want to discuss why we're using Tableau. First of all, it's accessible. Tableau has a Tableau public application which folks can download and use for free. And it provides you with a really, really strong suite of the Tableau tool. It gives you a lot of information that you would need and allows you to create really nice reports and visuals. Second, it's a low-code solution. There is the opportunity within Tableau to create calculated fields, to, if you're pulling from databases, to customize your own SQL queries. But if you don't have coding experience and you don't really want it, you don't necessarily need it to make something really good in Tableau. So it's generally not only accessible from like a cost prohibition point of view, but folks can go in, begin dragging and dropping, and start coming up with these really great visualizations. And then finally, and this is especially true because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Tableau's pretty ubiquitous at this point. I don't want to say it's a blessing, but one of the more positive things to come out of the pandemic is transparency and a bit more communication from government with individuals, from the private sector with individuals. And a lot of that has been done through the likes of Tableau, of Power BI, of ArcGIS, story maps, stuff like that. So it's something that really exists out there already and already has a good infrastructure for folks. I do want to take a quick second and walk through some examples of this, just if folks aren't super familiar. I think it's really useful to just get a sort of high level understanding of sort of what some of these visualizations look like and the different capabilities with them. The first that we see here is the state of Texas. The Department of Health and Human Services has a really strong COVID-19 vaccination dashboard. As emergency management folks, I'm sure almost all, if not all of us, have had something to do with COVID-19 vaccination in the past year. But this tool specifically gives you the opportunity to look at this different vaccine data, but through the lens of a specific county, through the lens of a county relative to the state. And it also lets you begin cross-tabbing data by population and vaccination status and age groups. So it really helps to tell a compelling story of vaccination in Texas. The second one I want to show is a quick overview of North Carolina. And North Carolina actually has a very strong reporting system for its early warning indicators, for health system capacity. But as we'll see as we get to the bottom of the screen, one of the really interesting and compelling things is actually what it's able to show us about surveillance and different vaccine strains. I think, as we all know, one of the interesting things about Omicron is that we're going from BA1 or just Omicron to sort of the Deltacron, as people are calling it. And this sort of helps tell the story of that. As you can see, BA2 or again, Deltacron isn't necessarily responsible for a large percentage or a large share of the variants within North Carolina, but it's beginning to show up. And the way that it's displayed is in a visually compelling, interesting, and relatively intuitive manner. And then the last example I want to use is actually a map of Hurricane Ida evacuees, as well as some evacuation data that is provided by geolocation services. I think this is actually one of the more interesting visuals I've ever seen in Tableau, especially when we get down to the different charts, which are showing resident population by hour. But it really helps tell the story of those who are evacuated, those who evacuated locally, those who stayed home, and then also those for whom data is not available. So as you can see, over time, the share of the evacuated folks increases, the offline sort of increases as well. But it really helps, again, tell that story. And that's what all of these visuals have in common, is they're working to tell the story of whatever that subject is. So to take a step back from sort of this range of visuals and say, what is it that we're going to be doing? Obviously, Tableau is big, it's used everywhere for everything, but what is it that, like, as emergency management professionals, we can expect to learn and expect to do with this tool? In 2022, we do have a few things that are sort of slated and ready to go. The first, of course, is today's inaugural meeting, which once again, thank you all for being here. Greatly appreciate it. But towards the end of April and in the beginning of May, we are going to have an introduction to rapid dashboarding. Rapid dashboarding, without giving too much away, is a type of dashboarding that relies heavily on pre-disaster, or in this case, pre-disaster standardization. So that way, you know the layouts that you're going to be working within, you know the types of visuals to expect, the types of data you're going to be collecting, and how it can be used to help tell some of these stories. So it's almost like a sit rep standardization type thing, but it's based off of sort of these 5 core principles of rapid dashboarding, which again, we'll get into later. Towards the end of June, we are going to be having a bit of an office hours opportunity. The office hours is really just going to be a time for folks within, again, emergency and disaster management to come together and try to collectively solve some of the problems that they're having in Tableau, try to get a better understanding of what they can do differently, and how they can more effectively communicate some of the things that they're doing. So these office hours, which are going to sort of be scattered throughout, these just serve as an opportunity for folks to come, ask questions, and sort of share best practices with one another. Now, in late July or early August, we are going to be having a Visualizing Equity event. This is actually, I think, the more exciting one of the year, and is based in large part on the 2021 executive order on equity. So as you may be familiar, FEMA recently adopted its own version of equity and is working on some standards for equity planning and better measurement. But one of the things that often gets lost in these conversations is how you actually visualize it and how you tell the story of equity. Organizations like the Urban Institute have done a really good job at centralizing a lot of this information, at sharing it, and beginning to really pave the way for what a more equitable visualization practice might look like. And this is a time where we're going to be really focusing on how we're ensuring that the colors we use, the shapes we use, the stories we're telling, they work to not necessarily perpetuate our biases, but they really try to help us, again, tell the story in a more effective manner without perpetuating or causing more harm. Sort of the bare minimum of this is do no harm data visualization. And that's the type of activity we're going to be looking towards exploring. Coming up sort of a little later in the fall is going to be uncertainty in design. As you all know, emergency management is very uncertain. There are lots of things that are changing constantly. Situations evolve. SITREPs from one day ago may be totally irrelevant the next day. Information is just constantly flowing, updating, and coming to reflect the more current situation on the ground. So we're going to be looking to show what these different types of principles for uncertainty might look like, how you can begin exploring that in Tableau, whether it's going to be with bands or with forecasting uncertainty, just a baseline understanding of how to better show that something might not be as fixed as it appears. Coming up in November, once again, we have our office hours, but then in December, we have sort of our big product showcase and networking event. The product showcase is meant to help folks, again, see what others are doing within the sphere. So it's taking some of maybe those outputs from the office hours, is allowing folks to share what they've been working on and how their perspectives and processes might have changed throughout the year. And it's really just a time for us to come together and see what we've been able to accomplish. I think emergency management is one of the harder fields to operate in, and I want to make sure that, especially us lowly analysts, we are getting sort of the recognition for the hard work, and we're really getting the opportunity to share what we've been doing. So this is really just a community come together, review, think about what's next type of event. Now, these are things that I've been able to glean based off of conversations with individuals, based off of some of the work that I'm doing myself. But I think it's really important, of course, to take a step back and hear from you all the types of things that you would like to see, the things you'd like to learn, the activities that you think would be useful, whether it is a workshop or if it is going to be some sort of visualization or design series. I'd love to hear from you all and see the types of activities that you might not have seen on the list that would be useful and interesting for you. So I'd actually like for folks to go ahead and if they'd like to either type it into the chat box or go ahead, take themselves, show themselves, go ahead and put their video on and maybe raise their hand and ask a question or propose an idea. So I'm gonna go ahead and mute now. and let some folks do that. This is also something that doesn't need to be answered right now, of course. If you have something that comes up, there will be contact information later. But we'll just give it a few more seconds, see if folks have anything else they'd like to see.
Yeah, William, I have one idea moving forward, kind of spurred from some of the introduction you gave. I think within the do not harm kind of inclusive nature of visualizations, I think something that I've always struggled with and that I've started to try to challenge myself on is color schemes when looking at race and gender and sex and LGBTQ plus types of responses. And there's not really a good color palette. So it'd be fun to have a workshop, or it'd be very productive to have a workshop and share ideas and share best practices and how to really change the stereotype from blue, pink genders to a really more inclusive and productive way to visualize, especially with color, those spheres. And that's something I've just pretty much Googled and looked at people's blogs and kind of copied what they've done. So it'd be great to get a more cohesive look at that.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And that's definitely something we're going to be looking to cover during that event. But you're right that there's not necessarily good guidance or standardization on the way to broach that. Again, some organizations have a more forward-thinking approach. That said, there isn't something that's widespread, and especially within this industry where we are so prone to use red to show bad or red to show higher impacts or vulnerabilities. I think it's important to really lean into that exploration. So great, thank you, Kevin. That was a great idea. And I'm looking in the chat and I'm seeing a few other things as well. Sean, that's actually a great thing as well. One of the things we're looking to do is partner with one of the different sort of emergency management organizations, aspiring emergency managers online, to host a sort of 2-week introduction to Tableau sprint series. So folks will have the opportunity over 2 weeks to really get familiar with the basics of GIS in Tableau. So some of the mapping capabilities, but also get familiar with some of the basic design, how to build a report, how to add filters, possibly working with parameters, stuff like that. So that's definitely something to keep your eyes peeled for. And then I'm also seeing the comment on accessibility too. These are great. So again, I'm going to go ahead and leave my email at the very end. If folks have other things they'd like to see, please feel free to reach out. But this is a good starting list. I appreciate it. The next thing to chat about is quickly getting involved. This is supposed to be a community organization and a community group. To that end, there are some community channels that we have. I am working on building out a Slack channel, and the only limiting factor there is my lack of experience with Slack, but that is something that is coming soon. We are also slightly engaged with a community known as the Emergency Management Data Community on LinkedIn. If you are not currently a member of that, I highly recommend getting in there, getting engaged with the group, the postings. It's a really good place to begin discussing data. Second, there is going to be a Tableau, user group forum. So this will just be sort of a standing opportunity for folks to ask questions, get answers. Think about it like office hours, but ongoing, just really whenever you have a question, feel free to ask. And then lastly, of course, we have the basic channels like email, LinkedIn, all of that classic stuff. And Colton, thank you, Austin, for taking that question. But that's that's really the low level of getting involved. We do also have opportunities for folks to take a more serious role. We are looking for someone to serve as the events manager, an outreach manager, and then some Tableau server and desktop advisors. These server and desktop advisors are going to be the folks who really help answer a lot of these questions during the office hours, and maybe some of the folks who are sort of perusing the forums, making sure that people are getting answers to the questions that they have. So if you're interested in any of these, again, please feel free to reach out to me directly. We can go ahead and have a chat and make sure that the opportunity seems like a good fit. And if so, then we can move from there. And that's all that I've got. I'm going to go ahead and send the email in the group, or in the chat, excuse me. But I do want to leave some time if folks have any questions about anything they saw, or again, ideas of things they'd like to see. I just want to give you all about 5-10 minutes now to sort of have that conversation with me. So I'm going to go ahead and once again turn it back to you all to see if there's any questions.
Hey, sorry, Will. I don't know how to raise my hand on here. I haven't used Zoom in a while. So one of the things we're working on in FEMA Region 7 right now is really building up data culture. And I think one of the things I'd be interested in learning some more about, if anybody's tackled it, is ways that they've bridged some of the data culture gaps. Like, for instance, we really want to utilize Tableau for a lot of things, but a lot of our leadership feels uncomfortable with dashboarding and whatnot, and they want traditional reporting. Tableau is not really built to do that very effectively. So just wondering what kind of workarounds people have established that actually help continue to promote data culture.
I can speak, at least from my end. It is something that we see a lot with our sponsors. For reference, I work at Argonne National Laboratory with the National Preparedness Analytics Center. And actually, FEMA is one of the primary sponsors we work with. So some of the teams that we work with are really interested in seeing Tableau dashboards and seeing some more of these tools to help supplement or replace the reporting infrastructure. But I think the question about culture, especially in emergency management, is a very good one, given sort of the slow to integrate nature of the field and sort of the hesitance, especially when it comes to some more of this data specific and data adjacent stuff. So I think that's a really great question, and is something that we can also explore further. Does anyone have any other questions that they'd like to ask? All right, well, thank you everybody. Again, this is the kickoff. We are going to be having our first event late April, early May. So keep your eyes peeled for that, where we'll be discussing rapid dashboarding, the different principles and how you can apply it within your organization to better supplement, develop, and report out on sit reps. In the meantime, again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to send an email to wcb@emgroup@gmail, or wcb.emgroup, excuse me, @gmail.com. And yeah, I appreciate everyone being here. And I look forward to going down this journey with y'all.